Hey everyone, Military Gun Guy here. Sorry it's been a little while since I have posted anything new. Just been busy kind of setting everything up. Just picked up this Russian PPSH 41 kit. It's in really good shape. It's all matching. But one of the things I wanted to concentrate on was the stock. Stock on this had like a soaked in nasty Cosmoline kind of finish on it. So what I did was I used my Scrubbing Bubbles bathroom cleaner along with a shit ton of Purple Power. This doesn't look like an original. It's original Russian, I believe, but it doesn't look like it was original to the rifle. The rifle has been refurbed. It's in beautiful condition, so it looks like they might have replaced the stock on it. The numbers do match. Kind of cool. Whatever. But one of the things I wanted to do, and this you'll find this if you do any restorations on any beach or birch stocks, which the Russians and I believe the Yugoslavians and whatnot were they commonly used. What happens is that if you see this grain, it's a beautiful grain. But what happens is that along these areas, this is like an end grain. So what ends up happening is that when you stain it, whether you use this is the wrong color, but Fiebing's leather dye, or you use whatever, there's like Minwax, which I'm not a huge fan of, but it does work, etc. What happens is that you get like splotchy, especially with the leather dye. You get these like splotchy areas that take longer to soak in. So what I've done with this one is I went from the original shit Cosmoline finish, might have had some shellac on it, who knows. I stripped all that off, boiled it out really good, got a lot of the crap out of it. The number's still intact. Probably can't see it, but maybe you can. It's 3053, kind of cool. I did give it a very light sanding, but one of the things that I did to basically seal the wood is take the end of a paintbrush and I basically use a technique called boning. Yes, you can start laughing if you want. I don't know if you can see, but when you bone wood, you might be able to see it here, but you might see a little bit of shine if I kind of rotate it. What that is that's the wood fibers that are compressed, similar to the fibers in the paintbrush. So what you basically do is you take once your stock is clean and however, whatever, you're just taking the end of a paintbrush and you're just doing this. And you're just basically compressing all of the wood fibers down. So that way when you lay your top coat or your stain on top of it, what ends up happening is that you don't have that splotchiness that looks like total shit. So you'll have these like dark areas where it hits the end grain. And then these light areas, your stock looks like completely uneven. Going for an Arctic birch, something like that on a Mosin, an M39, whatever, it's kind of cool. Like use like a pine tar or whatnot. But on these, I kind of like to seal the end grain or seal bone the stock, sealing the wood itself before I lay a stain on it. It's not a very complicated technique. You don't have to do anything special. This side actually has not been boned. It's been cleaned. It was lightly sanded. There was really not really much in the way. There's some roughness here, which I can sand out. But what I like to do, and I don't know if you can see how dull this kind of looks. So this is kind of fresh this whole thing is fresh out of the cleaning tank. This side has been boned and very lightly sanded to knock down any of the grain. This side is not. So again, what we're going to do is we're just going to take a paintbrush, and ideally you want a paintbrush with a wood handle. Don't use the plastic brush. And you just take it and you rub it all over the stock. And as you rotate it around, you'll actually start to see where it starts to get kind of shiny. Those are the areas where the wood is compressed. And in theory, if you did it right, that part of the wood should be actually sealed. So when you do put your top coat on, you will not have any issues with the splotchiness because you've effectively kind of sealed the end grain. Another thing you can do is you can do a spit coat of, I believe it's BLO. You can use shellac sometimes and very lightly sand it off. Something just to fill the grain in the wood so that it takes whatever top coat, stain, whatever, more evenly. Okay, so you're going to do this until you're satisfied. What I'm actually going to do is I'm going to do this along this side since I didn't do it before, so I can show you what the hell I'm doing. And then I'm going to very, very lightly sand it, and I'm going to bone it one more time. These areas are really kind of rough and open, so I'm just going to use a paintbrush to knock that down. I don't like a lot of sanding if I can avoid it. any stock stamp. This again, I think this is a refurb stock, meaning it was a replacement stock when the Russians redid this one, because there's literally no marking. There's just a serial number. Sometimes you'll find the little Arsenal stamps here and there in this area. This one's completely devoid of it. So, but nevertheless, I want this thing to look nice. I want it to look original. There's beautiful grain here that, you know, a nice, once this is sealed, will pop out beautifully. And then whatever top coat you decide, you know, they originally used shellac on most anything Russian, or polyurethane, or, you know, what have you. It's your rifle. You do whatever you want. You want original finish, I believe it's going to be a shellac. It's hot as hell in here, so my gloves are shiny. It's going to be a shellac. I believe they might have even used boiled linseed oil in some cases. This was just heavily coated in a looked like cosmoline, so I don't even know if there was any shellac on this, because it just sort of melted off once I cleaned it up. So when I come back, I'm going to finish this, and then I'm going to use this pre-stained wood conditioner. I actually kind of like this stuff because it kind of makes the wood very nice and even when it accepts the color. And then I'll put a top coat on it, show you how I do that, and then we'll get this thing finished up. So stand by for just a couple of minutes. Okay, we are back. I have very lightly sanded to knock everything down, boned the stock thoroughly, and you can actually feel it when you rub your hands over it. It's nice. It doesn't catch your gloves. There's a couple of spots here that need a little bit of help, but you can actually feel it when you wipe everything down. It's nice and smooth. There's no ridges or anything that'll catch your fingers. So now you know that everything is nice and sealed. There's a small rust stain there. I'm going to leave it. I actually kind of like it. So now I'm going to put the Minwax pre-stain conditioner, and you just kind of apply this generously. And what this does is this sort of, actually, believe it or not, I think kind of opens up the pores a little bit, but allows the stock to absorb stain more easily. I like this because it sort of provides like a little bit of a like a buffer, if you will, between the stain and the wood itself. And just kind of apply it very generously. Let it dry for about 5 minutes and then wipe it off. For this, I'm just using a generic wool dauber. You buy these off eBay. They're pretty cheap. You can buy like a 10-pack for like $5 or something stupid like that. But you can see how it really kind of makes, you're not really doing this. All this does is just a wood conditioner. You're not really using this as any sort of top coat or any sort of whatever. It's just basically to get the wood ready for your stain. And a little bit in there. All right, we'll let this set up for about 5 minutes, and then when we come back, I'm going to lay some stain on this, and you'll see how it's done. Okay, so we're back. I have laid a little bit of stain on there. Right now, I'm using my standby Fiebing's leather dye in tan. It gives kind of a nice kind of orange color to the wood, and once it soaks in, you can sand it off, you can add colors on top of it, whatever works for you. Now normally, if you clean the wood and didn't sand it or do any sort of sealing to it, once you hit some of these areas, you get these really dark splotches. That end grain just soaks it up and just looks like total shit. But now that everything has been properly sealed and compressed and whatnot, we are getting a nice even coat of dye on the finish. And you're just kind of rubbing it in, putting the color into the wood. The pre-stain conditioner should dry 10 minutes. You don't really need to get crazy with it. See, it's nice and even. It looks awful dark, but once we clean it up and give it a rub down, it'll actually lighten itself up. It's actually starting to soak into the wood nicely. So I will do this until it is completely even, and then I'll show you the next phase, which is basically putting a top coat. Okay, so we're back. This looks actually a lot darker than it looks in real life. That's obviously the camera, but it does have, the grain comes out really, really nice. The numbers kind of pop out nicely. You don't see any splotchiness. If you have a couple of areas where it's a little light and dark, usually what I do is take a little Scotch-Brite pad and I just very lightly wipe it down, or scrub it down actually. And what this does is this kind of gets into, this actually kind of it does remove some of the finish, but you're going to darken it back up once you put an actual top coat on there. You can experiment with colors. Some people will go in and they will, they'll mix colors. You can mix colors actually on the stock. You just have to be consistent with it. Some people will mix colors on the in like a little dish or whatever. I'm actually going to add some yellow to this, and what I'm going to do is something I've been trying lately is basically take your rag or whatever. Okay, and then I'm just going to lay some yellow in there. And it literally deposits a tiny little bit of color into the stock. You don't really see a huge difference, but if you kind of layer, I like to layer a lot of these stock finishes when I do them, and then you actually start to see it after a while, where it will get a nice, oops, what am I doing? It'll get a nice sort of almost an iridescent, depending what kind of top coat you use on it. On the crinks, I like to do the crink offs. I like to do kind of a layered where I sand a layer off and then I add a layer and I sand a layer and whatnot, just to kind of make things kind of interesting. You don't want to add too much of another color. If you can avoid, you can all avoid it. You can wipe it off. I'm just kind of filling in a couple of light areas. Because of this type of wood, it does tend to take the stain a little bit unevenly. So my next step is to add a semi-sealer coat. So I do is get my wipe on poly, put it on my rag, fairly generous amount, and then I'm going to go in with my tan one more time. I'm just going to add a little bit into my color, and then I'm just going to wipe it in. So what I'm actually doing is I'm kind of sealing the stock, almost like a spit coat, which sort of seals everything underneath, and then I'm actually kind of locking the color in. Once this is done, it'll have a very nice even sheen to it. You can hit areas that didn't quite take it well, more. You can hit it again. What's going on there? This is a fairly rough replacement stock. You can see the inside is just kind of like, I don't know if this was a wartime stock, a war expedient type of thing where they just kind of had to ship them out quickly, or what the deal is. But there's really not a lot of finishing on this. And Russians weren't really known for that anyway, but this one really is especially rough on the insides. They just kind of like, almost like the Japanese last ditch rifles. So I'm just going to lay a little more color in there. And using this, I can actually build the finish into the rifle, into the stock, sorry, to where, like I said, I can get layers of yellows and oranges and even some browns if you want to dark it up. It kind of depends on where you want to go with it. And as you're wiping this color in, it's actually sealing the stock at the same time, which is kind of nice. The hand rubbed finishes are nice because you're forcing the color into the wood, as opposed to if you spray it, like with the typical, polyurethane or whatnot. There's a couple of areas that are light. I'm gonna hit those and darken them up. I'm just gonna go in again. You can kind of see where it takes it, and then you just go in and wipe it off. And you can get a nice blend. Where the hell did you go? You can get a nice blend with it over time. So what we're gonna do is I'm gonna let this sit for a little while, probably overnight. It is Vegas heat, so it should actually cure fairly fast. A couple of spots I just don't like. And if you have a spot that just isn't taking, just wipe some stuff on there, let it sit for a minute, wipe it off. Some areas, if you over bone them, they do tend to get a little, this is slightly over compressed. You can kind of see where the color is not quite 100% taking. And it does look a little, the sheen looks a little splotchy under the lights. That'll even itself out as you put successive coats of finish on it. So that is basically how you do. This is probably not going to work, but I didn't think so. This is basically how you end up doing a custom stock finish, or how I do a custom stock finish on a birch or a beech wood. Again, you can tell by the little sort of scallops in the wood. You'll see that a lot on Russian stocks. You'll see a lot on Yugoslavian stocks as well. But that's how I do it. Like I said, I lay the color in, and then I just add successive colors of poly or shellac or whatever you want to do. And then you do a final coat. You let it cure for a day or so. I do recommend putting a wax, Minwax, let me see it. The finishing paste wax here. You could buy it at any hardware store or whatever. I've also used the Johnson's wax. Almost any kind of wax will do. People even use car wax. Just something to protect the finish. Wait for about a week or so to everything kind of cure and flash off and whatnot, and then go ahead and protect your stock with your wax finish. And that also sometimes will also knock the sheen down a little bit if it's a little too shiny for you. So there we go. Russian PPSH 41 stock restoration. Like I said, going from your cleaner layer to a very light sanding to your boning to another light sanding to another boning to compress the wood fibers so you don't get the splotchy effect. You can see where the grain pops very nicely. This is going to be a restore rifle eventually. But I'm starting with the wood because that's the easiest and fastest to do, because re-welds are a pain in the ass. So any questions? militarygunguy702@gmail.com. Advice is always free. If you want to see something in particular, have me do, just drop me a line or hit me up on my YouTube channel and let me know what you think. Thanks for watching.